Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Stitch Sessions, and welcome to this month's installment in our Life's a Beach crochet series. It's November. That means we only have one more installment after this. And for this month's project, we are doing something that you might find a little bit interesting. For November's project, we are working on a hot water bottle cover. Now, you might be thinking, how is that related to a beach series? Well, for those of you young ladies that may suffer from overheating, also known as hot flashes, you may really appreciate this project this month. Because I discovered that if you fill a hot water bottle with ice cold water, it is the perfect tool to have with you on the beach to keep you cooled off. So that is why this month's project is a hot/cold water bottle cover. And it's made out of 100% cotton. And it's perfect because it'll absorb any moisture and be great on the skin. And for our beach location that I showed off this fantastic project, we went up to Wasaga Beach. Now, I couldn't do a beach series without talking about the most famous Canadian beach, if not the most famous beach in the world. The most famous in the world, you ask? Well, it's because Wasaga Beach is the longest freshwater beach in the world. And it runs a length of 14 kilometers or approximately over 8 miles long. And the name Wasaga Beach was derived from the Nottawasaga River. And it was originally classified as a village in 1949 with a population of less than 500 people. Now, the beach sits on the southern bend of Georgian Bay. It's quite a large bay, but it feeds into Lake Huron. And you may remember Lake Huron from a few of our other beach locations we visited this year. And we took a trip there at the end of the summer and enjoyed such a beautiful, what a pretty drive it was up there. And it's, of course, one of the most popular beaches in Ontario, definitely. And there's so much to do, so many different beaches that you can go to if you like something a little bit more lively, a lot more activity going on. Then you could visit Beach 1. And then there's various other beaches like Beach 2, 3, 4, up to Beach 6, I believe. Some of them are a little more quieter than others if you're more apt to be in a place where you'd rather have it to be a little bit more family friendly. There's many options for you. And the other thing about this beach is that there's so many different options for different activities. So there's plenty of trails for hiking and cycling and cross-country skiing in the winter, as well as snowmobiling is very popular up here. So if you ever get a chance to be in the area or to visit the province of Ontario and be up in the Georgian Bay area, I would highly recommend you take a trip to this beautiful, beautiful sandy beach. We're now going to talk about how we created our cold hot water bottle so that I was able to enjoy the beach this day and was able to stay nice and cool. So let's head on over to the crochet table and get all of our materials together and start stitching up our water bottle cover. All right, so we know that we need our water bottle of choice. So this one is mine. And you can pick these up on Amazon if you can't seem to come across them in the store, but most drugstores carry a water bottle. And I would always recommend having a handy little measuring tape handy. It'll help you figure out the length that you're going to need to create. So a handy measuring tape is always good. A pair of scissors and a darning needle to sew in your ends are a definite must. And let's talk about the yarn I'm going to be using here. Now, as you can see, I've got a lot of leftover little bobbins here. They are all the same yarn, 100% cotton. I do recommend 100% cotton for any projects where it's going to come into contact with extreme temperatures or moisture. Now, some people will create projects like this with material that has maybe 85% cotton and 10% acrylic, and some are very comfortable doing that. I personally prefer, for these type of projects, absolutely 100% cotton. It's much easier to throw in the wash. It's much more resilient to moisture. And for me, it's just kind of a safe bet. So the actual yarn I am using, and I'll put a picture of it just up on the screen there, is actually by Loops and Threads, and it came out over the summertime, and it is called Cotton Colors. And it is 100% cotton, but it's got just this little extra softness to it than the traditional, let's say, Bernat Handicrafter cotton, although that's another fabulous yarn that you can use for this project. Now, those particular balls, they come in it's not a gradient, although this is the way this project is going to work, but it's got a couple of colors within the ball, and so that's why you can see I've got these divvied up because I wanted to control the colorway for another project. But it does come in 200 grams, so I think that one of those balls will definitely be more than enough to create your water bottle cover, okay? Now, I love these colors because we will end up creating a bit of a gradient, and these colors are perfect because they're wintry, but they can also go for summery, beachy colors too. So you've got the dark blues, the light blues here, and a little bit of that kind of teal and aqua. So you can use them for hot water bottles, or like I said, you can use them to cool you down. And that's what I loved about these colors. So that's the yarn I'm using. And for this project, the hook I will be using is a 5.75 millimeter hook. It's also known as an I or a size 10. Now, the 5.75, this is an old hook I have. You may not find this hook, and that's okay. I generally would have used a 5.5. I just have it somewhere that I can't seem to find. So that's why I'm using the 5.75, and this particular hook happens to be one of the boy hooks, which are my favorites. So just in case you think, oh Lord, I don't have a 5.75 and I can't find them anywhere, don't fret. Even if you wanted to use a size 6, you're going to be totally fine. These are a medium 4 weight yarns. So I comfortably work with a 6 or a 5.5 or even as low as a 5 millimeter hook. Again, it depends on how tight you'd like your stitches to sit. As always, if you are a tighter stitcher, I recommend going up a hook size. If you're a bit more relaxed, I would go down a hook size, okay? So those are all the materials we've got on the go. So let's get started. Okay, so what's so fun about this project is I feel like you're going to be bowled over at how easy it's going to be to create this funky little look we're going for. So I've already started one of my, I guess, patches, we'll call it. And we're actually going to be creating it in strips first and then attaching the strips together to give us the body of our water bottle. And then we're going to create the neck separately. Okay, so this is the first kind of swatch I was playing around with. So what we're basically doing, and you can see we've got the main colors, what's going to create our gradient. And I am going to separate them. Now, you don't have to do this, but I like creating a little bit of a trim, which will make it easier to then sew them together afterwards. So we've got our main colors here, and then we've got a little trim color going, and we're actually working them this way. So we're going to be working sideward, I like to call it, or you can call it lengthwise. And then we're going to create 3 patches. So based on mine, I've got I have 12 stitches across, so it will be 36 stitches in total. And then I'm going to create 3 of these, and then we're going to sew them together, and Bob's your uncle. It's going to be really easy. Now, if you are not a fan of doing these 3 small chunks, you can actually just do it all the way up and go up and down, back and forth, if you still like the idea of creating this ribbed effect. So I'm going to get you started. We're going to start off with our rows of 12 stitches. If you want to do it all the way up, you're going to do 36 stitches, okay? Again, this is for my water bottle, which, by the way, let me just take a quick measurement here just to be on the safe side. I'm pretty confident this is a standard size water bottle. So basically from what I call the shoulder here down to the edge, it's a 10-inch water bottle, okay? And so for me, I know that 3 of these patches is going to take me up to these 10 inches, okay? So here we go. Let's create our first patch. Okay, so I am going to take one of my main colors. So for me, this is going to be the dark blue here. And you're going to start by placing a slip knot on your hook. And then what we want to do to create this first patch we have going here is we want to create a chain that's going to give us the width of our patch, or a strip. I guess we should call it a strip. So I'm going to start off by chaining 13. So I'm just going to yarn over, chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Now I've kept it fairly relaxed. I don't want them to be too tight. Again, I'm just going to compare this here, which is fantastic. Okay. Now, once you have your 13 chains, what you want to do is find the second chain from the hook. So remember, we never count the loop that's on the hook, so we count 1 and 2. And into that second chain, we're just going to place a single crochet. Just like that. And then we're going to continue all the way down and place one single crochet into each stitch until we get back to the very first chain. Okay, and I'm just going into that very last chain, which is technically the first chain. And now you're going to notice that you have 12 stitches in total. Okay, so remember we had 13 and then we worked in the second stitch from the beginning. So that's going to give us 12 stitches in total. Okay, so now what we're going to do for row 2 and every row from here on out is you're going to chain 1, turn your work. And what we're going to do is, instead of working into the full stitches, which would be right there, we're going to work into the back loops only. So if we just turn your work a little bit, you can see the tops of your V's there. And what we're going to do is, into the very first stitch, which is right there, we're going to insert our hook in through the center of that V. So that's going to pick up the back loop only, which is the loop that's furthest away from you. And we will yarn over, pull through, and just resolve our single crochet as usual. Okay, just like that. And that's what you're going to do into each and every single stitch until you get to the end. And you should still have 12 stitches. Okay, and now by continuing to do that, that's what's going to create this really nice little ribbed effect. Really simple. We're just using single crochet stitches, and it's just going to give a little bit of nice texture to our strip. So that's what you're going to do. Go ahead and finish row 2, and I'll just meet you at the end to kind of guide you through what's going to happen after that. Okay, and this is my 12th stitch here. So this is where we did that chain 1. So it might be a little tricky there. So I'm just going to find that loop and my last single crochet. Okay, so now you've got 2 rows and it looks something like that. Now you can see where that little ridge is coming out. You can see it's pushing it forward. So when we work into the back loops only, you're going to see the front loops push forward. Okay, now everything is going to continue the same. You're going to chain 1, you'll turn your work, and right back into that very first stitch, the back loop only, you'll go back in and you will single crochet. So this is going to be really, really easy. It's a great way to practice your single crochets and also get comfortable working into a different part of the stitch. Now, for those of you who may be interested, I created 2 little lessons on how to identify parts of your stitch, which I think if you're a little newer, you may find very interesting to help you understand kind of the stitch work itself of crochet. I'll put a link for that in the description box down below. But in the meantime, this is it for the project. So you're going to continue working this for as many rows as you need. Now, for my water bottle, I am going to be working 32 rows for each of my strips. Now, I am going to need to create 6 strips. So I just pull this up here. I'm going to have 3 for the front and then 3 for the back. Now, some people might say, well, why don't you just create 3 long ones to loop around? And you will see why at the end, because I'd like to create a trim all the way around and it will only sit more uniformly if I actually have 6 separate pieces, and you'll see that as we go along. So for now, all you want to focus on is creating 6 strips with a total of 32 rows for each strip. Again, that is if you are working the typical 10-inch water bottle, okay? If you have one that's slightly larger, obviously you'll have to just do the number of rows you need and measure as you go along, all right? So pretty straightforward. So what I'm doing is I'm gonna create the first 2 strips in my darkest color because I want my darker color to sit on the bottom. And then I will bring up the lighter blue for my middle strips for the front and the back. I've already done my teal one here. I'll have to do one more strip of the teal, and then I'll have all 6 of my strips. And then I'm gonna meet back up with you guys, and we're gonna talk about how to actually construct the main body of the water bottle. Then we're gonna talk about creating our neck opening, which is gonna be super fun. So you know what to do. Just continue on. 1 single crochet into the back loop of every stitch, 32 rows, 6 strips. I will see you back here in YouTube time in a flash. Okay, guys, so as is wont to happen with crochet items that we are repeating, I ended up making 8 strips, okay? And what happened here is that I actually used a larger hook size. I believe I used an actual 6mm hook for this strip. And because I was using just a slightly smaller hook, the 5.75, so remember at the beginning I said you can use a 6 or a 5.5, obviously that is going to change the size of your strips. So these ones came just slightly narrower. And so instead of 6 strips per side, I'm just going to show you guys here, I really actually need 6 strips per side, 6 strips in total, 3 strips per side. I actually need 4. So if you see there my strips, and I've got the bottom here, I actually need 4 strips in total, okay? So that means that I need 8 strips in total, 4 strips per side. I can't speak today. So I've got my 8 strips done, but I also wanted to take you through just how I did the finishing trim on each side. And I did this just to show a little bit of cohesion between all the colors. So I managed to have just enough of this same color to create the kind of combining strips so that at least you can see that the color is the same there. You don't have to, it's not a big deal, but I just wanted to show you kind of what my thought process was in creating this cover. So nice and easy, just a bunch of rectangles basically. So I'm going to quickly show you how I did the trim here. So I just finished my last strip. And so you can see that beautiful ribbed effect it created. And now what we're going to do is just using single crochets is we're just going to go along these edges here just to give them a little bit more of a finessed look. Okay, so we're going to take our selected yarn and we're going to place a slip knot on our hook, just like that. And then you want to find the top right corner of any edge. So I'm just going to start here. And so we know that we've got 32 rows, and we're going to place 1 stitch into the side of our rows. So see, our rows go this way, but now we're going to work into the sides. So we know that we want to have 32 stitches at the end here, okay? So a great way to start off is find that very first stitch there, right at the end, and just kind of help you might have to help your hook through there. And you're just going to slip stitch to join. Just like that. And now we're going to chain 1 and go back into that same stitch or the same area and single crochet. Okay. And I'm actually going to try and work over my short tail here. You can weave yours in later at the end. So that was the first row here. Now we've got what I call a dip row and a ridge row. So the ridge row is where the loops stand out because we worked into the back loops. So we're in the dip row here. And so I want to find somewhere close to the edge, right about there. And I'm going to place a single crochet into there. So that's going to be in the side of that row. Okay. Now I'm going to go into the ridge row. And I just like to find the first nice little spot there closest to the edge, right there. Insert, pull through, and single crochet. Okay, so you're going to have some nice stitches at the end. I'm going to do a few more with you. So now we're in the dip row here. So that is a good spot. And I always try and get a couple of loops there just to give it a little bit more fortification. Okay, and now I'm going into a ridge row. Right there, the spots are just waiting for me. Pull through. And now a dip row right there. So every other row is going to have a ridge and every other row is going to have a little dip. Okay. And go into one more ridge row right there. It's pretty straightforward. This is what you're going to repeat all the way down the edge of your work here. Okay, so your work is looking something like that. Now you can see you have a much more finished edge along the side, and I just love how that turned out. Okay, so go ahead and finish that side. Snip off, and then you're going to turn around and do the exact same thing on the other side. So remember, we have 32 rows, so you should have 32 stitches on each side. Once you've finished your 8 strips and all of their edges, what we're going to do is we're going to attach them all together along that common color. Okay, so I'll meet you back here very, very shortly. Okay, so I've got all of my 8 pieces finished with their respective trims. So it looks something like that. And as you can see, I've kind of laid it out. I'm just kind of seeing how it sits nicely on the bottle. So right now what I want to do is I want to sew the 4 pieces together of each side. So I'm going to have a front side and a back side or vice versa. I was hoping to keep them exactly the same colors, but you might be able to see here that I ran out of this blue color, the slightly darker blue. So these two are very similar, but that's okay. So yeah, so I wanted to work it on a gradient, so from darkest to lightest. And so what we're going to do now is I'm going to take you through how to sew each section together. Now, I want them sewn together so that I have 4 and 4. And there's a reason for this, because once we place them together, I am going to do something slightly different with the trim. But we'll get to that after we put our pieces together. Then I'll need to talk about the neck opening of the water bottle. But let's get to sewing our pieces together. Okay, so I just had barely enough of this grayish color. I'm not sure if it comes through clearly on camera. Just to kind of give me enough to finish all of the exact trims. And actually you can see here I actually ran out and started using some of my Bernat Handicrafter cotton yarn. So we're going to just blend that nicely in there and no one's going to be the wiser. And in fact, that is the color I'm going to use to sew in all of these pieces together. And what I'm going to do is I'm only going to use the inside loops, and I don't think you're going to be able to see this very much anyway. So I'm not too concerned about it. So what we want to do is I always like to take a length of yarn and double it or triple it. But in this case, I'm very low on my yarn. So I'm going to be very specific with just doubling the length. And then I'm just going to snip it. Okay, so now I've got a piece of yarn here and my darning needle. What I want to do is I just want to thread it through just like that, and we're ready to go. So one thing you want to decide is what is your right side and what is your wrong side. So these are my right side. So I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these first two strips and I'm going to take the right sides and I'm going to place them so that they're facing each other. Okay. Then from there, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a simple whip stitch. Okay. So here we go. I'm going to just find the very first little loop here, and it's right beside that knot. So it just makes it really easy for me to find my starting point. And then I'm going to find the next one corresponding here, and here's the knot. I'm just going to slide my needle in just in that first loop there. There we go. I'm going to feed my yarn through, and what I like to do a lot of times is actually just tie it to secure it. Just tie a knot there. Okay, just like that. And you can even, if you want to, you can tie it to some of the loose ends that are still here. But it's totally up to you. Whoops, there we go. So I've tied the knot there. By the way, if you find that all of your short tails get really distracting to you, I would recommend that you sew all of your tails in before you start this process. I plan on working over my tails so it doesn't bother me, but I always like to make sure that I offer the suggestions to people that works best for you. So now we've secured our yarn. And then what I'm going to do is from there, I'm going to work using only the outside loops. So we've got the outside loop in the back panel, and we've got the outside loop in the front panel. And so those are the ones I'm going to work into, just like that. And we're going to leave the inside loops alone. And then I'll show you the effect that we're going to work on. So here we go. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to go into the very next stitch, which is going to be right here. And I'm going to come up through the bottom of the outside back loop. And then I want to find the corresponding stitch, which is going to be, not that one, but this one here, down through the center of the stitch so that I come out of the outside loop. So I don't want to go up through here. I want to go in through there. Okay, then I'll pull that through. Just make sure you don't get distracted if you've left your short tails. Just like that. You want to pull it a little snug, but not too tight. You don't want your work to pucker. And then you just keep repeating that. You go to the next stitch and go to the outside loop, which is there. Come up from the bottom, find the corresponding stitch, which is right here, and go down into the outside loop there, which is the one closest to you. Okay, I'm gonna have a few little tails there. So I'm going to do a few of these with you so you can see kind of the effect we're going for. Okay, just pull it a little snug. And again, outside loop, corresponding outside loop. So essentially we're kind of leaving those inside loops to snuggle against each other, which I kind of like the sound of that. Okay, so you can see that the stitch work is coming up there. And now because this is a slightly different tone of yarn, you are going to notice it. But if I had had some of this gray left over, I would have used the gray and it would just blend it in perfectly. But I'm okay with this too. This is meant to look a little patchy for the water bottle, so I don't mind it at all. So there we go, back outside and through, and then one more, and then I'm going to turn the work over so you can see. So outside loop and outside loop. Okay, so now I'm just gonna open my work. And what that does when we work with the outside loops is that was the wrong side. So this is the right side. So you see, there's the stitch work. And because it was on the outside loops, technically on the right side, it looks like it's on the inside loops. So these loops just sit really naturally snuggled against each other, and it hides that stitch work there in case you want it to be hidden. Okay, and so it just sits nice and snugly one against the other. All right, now what you want to do is match it stitch per stitch all the way across. It does happen once in a while that you might be off by a stitch or even two. Do not panic. You can always stitch 2 to 1 somewhere along the ways. So what I'm going to do, I recommend that you pause this video. I'm going to set you loose to do it stitch by stitch. And I'm going to meet back up with you when you've got a couple of stitches left, and we'll see if my stitches match perfectly. And if they don't, I will show you how I solved that problem. But in the meantime, stitch up your side, and I'll see you back here in a bit. Okay guys, so I'm back, and as it turns out, my stitches are matching up perfectly. And of course, with experience, it does come down to knowing my stitch count every time, but you know, don't get me wrong, there have definitely been many times when I have been off by a stitch or 2. So there is my last little one here. Now, for example, if I had 2 stitches left on this side and 1 on this side, I simply would have whip stitched this side into the first one, and then I would have gone back into the same stitch and stitched up the second one. When you're off by 1 like that, it won't make a difference at all. So that's my recommendation if that happens. So here I am at the end. I am done. And what I'm going to do is I'm just actually going to knot this to one of these short tails, which comes in handy here. Just like that, and you can knot it a couple of times, which I'm a fan of because I like keeping it nice and secure. Okay, and now you're going to open it up to the right side, and your work is going to look something like this, which I absolutely love. So you can see, by using the outside loops only, once you turn the right side out, it just creates this pretty little ridge here, creates this groove here. It's just kind of a little way to add some extra kind of texture, which I really like. And because we're using a lot of these leftover scrap colors, like I really wanted it to have this nice patchy look. So that's how you do it. You're going to whip stitch all of your pieces together. So you've done this one. Now what I would do is take the next one and do the same thing. So make sure that you've got your right sides facing up, and then just simply fold it over, and then start at one end and go the other way. Now, of course, if you're left-handed, you would start on this side and go this way. And when you're done that one, you take your fourth one, same thing. Find the right side facing up, fold it over, do that. Once you're done 4, you're going to set that panel aside, and I've got this one on my water bottle here. And then you're going to do the same thing for the next set of 4. So then eventually what you're going to do is you're going to end up with 2 panels, okay? So you got a little bit of work ahead of you. Maybe it'll be enough to get through one of your favorite Netflix shows, an episode or 2. So pause the video, do that, and I'll meet back up with you when you have 2 panels ready to go. Okay, guys, so I have finished sewing all of my 8 or my 4 and 4 together. So I have 2 panels here, and you can see I've already kind of marked them together. So I've got panel 1, panel 2, and they have relatively the same kind of color scheme there. And I've woven in all my ends so that it doesn't get confusing. Now what I've done here is I've marked the neck opening for my bottle, okay? So what I did is I counted 9 stitches in, and that the 9th stitch is where I placed my stitch marker, and I made sure it matched up exactly with the back panel. And then I did 9 stitches in from the edge there, same thing with the back panel. So you should have 14 stitches through your center. So including the back panel, that's going to be 28 stitches for your opening. So you want to keep in mind, remember that your bottle is narrower here, but it is wider up here. So I based it on the widest part of the bottle. So this is testing time, a good time to do it. You want to make sure that and what I do is I actually I pinch this in, because see, this creates a false sense of space, because in reality, it's going to be sewn like that. Okay, so I just make sure that that head there can get in and out fairly comfortably, and it can. Okay, and then I just make sure it's sitting nicely, and it's exactly where I want it to be. Okay, and it's sitting perfectly there. It's going to stretch a little bit, of course, and we are rocking. So we're very close to getting this thing finished. So now what we want to do is we want to talk about seaming up our sides up to the neck area, and then seaming up the other side to the neck area. And then what we're going to do is we are going to crochet our neck, okay? So we're going to crochet actually the complete width of the top, not the most narrowest part, okay? And then we're going to create just a little cinch area here where we can cinch it in. And we will be just about done. So we're very close, guys. So here we go. Okay, now what I would recommend is that on your right side, you are going to start from the bottom corners here. We're going to seam our way up over the corner and to our first stitch marker here. Then for the other side, we're actually going to begin from the stitch marker and continue around and then down the side. Now, why am I doing that? Because that will maintain a consistent look on the stitch. So remember, when we're stitching up this way, that the front of our stitch is going to be facing up. If we do the same thing on this side, we'd have to flip it over, and that means the front of our stitch is on this side, which would make the back stitch facing this way against the front stitch of this one. At the end of the day, it's not a huge deal, but I like to kind of keep things very consistent. So that is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to grab a different color now. I have some leftover of this lighter blue, and that's what I'm going to use to seam up to here and then down here before we tackle the neck, because I want to make sure that our pieces are seamed together before we get on to the neck. So here we go. We're going to start from the bottom right edge here for this one. Now we know that we had 12 stitches in each panel. So we have four of these strips. That gives us 48 stitches. And now we've also got these joining rows here. Okay, so we're going to count those. So 12 times 4 is 48. We're going to count this as 49. This center row is going to be 50, 51, 52, and 53. So in total, we are going to have 53 stitches all the way to the top. Okay, we're going to continue with our single crochet. And we're just going to start off here with a slip knot on our hook. Okay, and now, so what we want to do is we want to start off with this first stitch right here. So it's as if we're going to work into this side here, but we're just going to turn it sideways. Whoops, let's catch that second loop there, okay? Because remember, this row will count for a stitch. I am going to do the same thing on the back seam so that it's perfectly lined up. So this one needs a little bit of a help there. So I'm just going to put my hook in there. And what I'm going to do right away, I'm just going to single crochet immediately. A lot of times we'll slip stitch to join, but I'm going to pull up a loop through there, just like that. And then I'm going to single crochet to join, just like that. And then I'm going to just swing that tail around. I'm going to work over these two tails here, okay? Now what I'm going to do should be straightforward because we worked these strips lengthwise here. So we should have stitches that we are working into that are easily visible. So here we go. We can see these stitches just beautifully. So I am going to insert my hook into this first stitch here. Might need a little help because it might be usually a little tight on the end. So that's one. And now I'm going to find the corresponding stitch on the other side here, which is right there. May need a little bit of help as well. Just like that. And I'm going to tuck that tail in there. Okay. And then I'm just going to pull a loop through all of that. And it is going to be snug, so you're going to have to just play with it. Oh, that wasn't too bad. Okay. And then yarn over and single crochet. Okay, pretty straightforward. So now I go into the next stitch, which is right next to it, right there. And into the corresponding panel, I will do the same, just like that. Okay, then pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through all of those. Okay, whoops. Just like that. So it might be a little loosey-goosey at the beginning here, but just keep tightening up that tail. And I'll do one more with you. So I'm going to insert into the very next stitch right beside it. And then I'll find the corresponding stitch right there. So this should be really straightforward to keep you nice and even with your stitches because they're easy to find. So there you go. So you can see now, okay, it's just kind of seaming it up beautifully. Now I want this to sit on the outside because I do want to create that nice little stitched look up the side. Okay, so go ahead and finish this strip here. I am just going to meet up with you once you come to your join here because it can be a little funny as to where to insert your hook. So just finish up this first strip. It's pretty straightforward, and I'll meet you back here in a moment. Okay, so I've got one more stitch remaining here. Let me insert my hook, find the corresponding one, and single crochet. So now I'm coming up to the part where we joined, right? So we had a row and a row that we stitched. We're going to bring these two together, and we're just going to count this as one stitch. So I'm going to find a spot somewhere in the center of all of this, and I want to kind of get a little bit lower because I want to make sure I have a few loops as fortification. And then I find somewhere in the center of the corresponding panel, pull up a loop, and single crochet. Okay, so basically it's just kind of going in the center of the seam. And then I would continue on to go into the very first stitch here. Now see, that's where the single crochet of the trim was worked into, and that is why we only did one stitch in the middle. And then this one has to just, it's sitting a bit snug in here. Okay, just like that. Okay, so that way it's going to sit a little bit more uniformly together. Just sit that down flat like that. So now we're getting a very nice finished edge. Okay, and then you're going to continue on and do that all the way up. And then I'll just meet you when you get up to the corner here, just to kind of help you go around the bend up to that last stitch marker. But you are pretty much set to go, nice and easy peasy, one single crochet all the way there. Okay, I have one more stitch to go here. And then we'll have reached our corner. So, but just so you can see so far, you can see now it's given us a nice clean edge to our cover here. So we're into the last stitch here, which is technically the first stitch of this corner. So I go in the top, and then I make sure I go into the top of the corresponding one and single crochet. And now I'm going to add two more single crochets into the same spot. And what that does is it helps me round the corner comfortably. So that's a second, and that's the third. So in total, you're going to have 3 single crochets. See how it just curves beautifully? So the first single crochet belongs to the side, the second belongs to the corner, and the third now belongs to the top of this row. And all we're going to do now is finish off by continuing on to single crochet the top portion here until we get to that little stitch marker. Okay, and we have reached our stitch marker. Whoops. We've done our last single crochet, and I can actually just take that pin out. And we are done. Look at how nice that looks. Such a nice finished off look. Okay, so I'm just going to snip my yarn here. And then I'm going to fasten off. Pull it nice and tight. All right. So there we have it. So you can see that it's created this beautiful finished edge here, okay, around the tip really nicely. And just as an example, you can see this is definitely the back of our stitches, right? So we want to make sure that this back stays also on this side. So that's why now, to go down the other side, we are going to begin at the stitch marker and work our way across. Remember, when we get to here, we're going to place 3 single crochets in that corner and then continue down the exact same way we went upwards, okay? So I'm going to leave you guys with that because it's the same thing, only reverse. We're starting from up here, going around the corner, coming down, okay? So pause the video, finish the other side, then I'm going to meet back up with you guys and we are going to create the neck of our water bottle cover. Okay, so I have finished stitching up the sides here, and I had just enough of that color to get me to the ends. So there's my opening there, and there's the top. And I'm just going to make sure that it all fits nicely. All right, like that. So our top comes out through here. Neck of the bottle, and we've got plenty of room down here, which is great. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to tackle the neck area here. And so what I want to do here is we are going to do a couple of rounds, and then we're going to create a little eyelet round, and that way we can put a little cinch string in there just to kind of cinch the top shut. And it'll be pretty easy peasy. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay, so I have some of this tealy color left in my scraps of this cotton. So that's what I want to use for the neck, just to create a little bit more continuity here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to begin by placing a slip knot on our hook. And then you can start anywhere, your right side facing out or your back side. I think, actually, I will begin back here. And I will start somewhere right in the middle here, right about there. So I'm going to insert my hook. And I'm going to slip stitch to join my yarn here. Just like that. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 1, and then right back into that same stitch, I'm just going to single crochet. So the chain 1 won't really count as anything, just kind of gives me a little buffer to work with here. And then I am going to try and work over that tail as I go. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way around. So I'm going to pull up a loop here, just like that. And into the next one. Now this is where I started to seam up the side. So I'm going to have 1 single crochet in there. Then all I'm going to do is I'm just basically going to skip over this and go right to the other side. And there is my stitch on the other side there of the seam, and single crochet. Okay, so it just gives us a nice little seamless edging, no big deal. And that's all you're going to do all the way around until you come back to where you started. Okay, 1 single crochet into each and every single stitch. And this is my very last stitch here. I'm back to the beginning. And just FYI, I have a total of 32 stitches all the way around, and it's really nice and uniform. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the top of my first single crochet. I'm going to ignore that chain 1, and I'm just going to slip stitch to join. Just like that. Okay, so you can see that nice lip is now created the neck opening. And now I'm going to do this for 3 more rounds. So I will just chain 1, and I will do the same thing again. I will single crochet right back into that same stitch, and should be pretty straightforward. Now you've got these stitches that you can see nice and clear, and that's all you're going to do. 1 single crochet into each stitch. So you're going to have a total of 4 rounds done when I meet back up with you again. So we've already finished round 1. This is the beginning of round 2. You will slip stitch to join, chain 1, do round 3, slip stitch, chain 1, and round 4. I'm going to meet back up with you when we're at the end of round 4. Okay, so I have finished my 4 rows, and now I'm going to get ready to do an eyelet round here, and I just kind of refitted the bottle in there because I just kind of wanted to make sure it's sitting exactly where I wanted it, just like that. Oh, please excuse my finger. I just had a little bit of a cut there. Now, just a little comment about the end opening here. You can do a variety of different things. I am choosing to just leave mine open-ended. Again, it will adjust its size once I fill it with liquid. And I do like the ability sometimes to actually just place my hand directly on the bottle. I find psychologically sometimes it helps to cool me down. So for me, I use this a lot more to cool me down as opposed to warm me up. So that's why I'm doing that. But you can do a variety of different things. You can then sew on a zipper, which would make it really super easy to keep it closed. I'm not worried about this falling out, and that's why I'm going to have the cinch tie up at the top. Or you can actually make a longer flap here and place 2 buttons. So I've seen a variety of different things done, so I just kind of wanted to address that because I'm sure many of you are thinking, what is going on with that opening? Okay, so now let's go on to the eyelet round here for our water bottle. Okay, so where I slip stitch to join the round, what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to go right back into the same spot where I slip stitched, and I'm going to place a half double crochet. So I'm going to yarn over and place a half double crochet there. And then I'm going to place a half double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. So now I'm going to have a total of 4 half double crochets. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 2. Then I'm going to skip the next 2 stitches, and into the 3rd, I'm going to place a half double crochet stitch. Might get a little tricky there. And that's going to create a little eyelet there. Now you can just do a chain 1 and skip 1, but I just like the look of having the chain 2. So then I'm going to continue as before, and I'm going to do another 3 half double crochets to give me a total of 4. So that is going to be kind of the repeat we're going to do for this round. I will always do 4 half double crochets, then chain 2, skip 2, and then 4 double crochets. So I've just done 4 half double crochets. Sorry, I think I said doubles. Half double crochets. I'm going to chain 2. I'll skip 2 stitches and then continue again with 4 half double crochets. And it's always a little bit tighter when you're going in after the chain 2. Sometimes your yarn splits a little bit. There we go. Okay, so you can have something that looks like that. So do that all the way around, and I'll meet back up with you when you come back to the start of your round. Okay, now at the very end here, I ended up having 3 stitches left over, so not a big deal. So instead of chaining 2, I'm going to chain 3, so that eyelet's going to be a little bit larger. And then I'm going to come over here where I did the first half double crochet, and I'm just going to slip stitch to join. And all is well with the world. And this yarn is quite splitty. There we go. Okay, so that eyelet is just a little bit larger than the others. But now your neck is looking something like this. So you can see it's got the little eye opening there, so we can put our little cinch tie on. And now we're just going to continue finishing the rest of our neck here. And ideally for me, I'd like it to kind of come just before that little top lip there. I like to kind of cover it as much as possible. I don't want it to overgrow this because of course it will be dealing with moisture and you're going to have to fill it up. So I kind of like the idea of it coming up to about here. So we're going to do another 4 rounds now of single crochet stitches. So right where I slip stitch to join here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 1, and into the very next stitch, I am going to single crochet. And I'm going to single crochet into every single stitch and space. Okay, so these are the stitches. Okay, and now I've got a chain 2. I'm just going to chain 2. I'm just going to single crochet right into that space. Nice and easy. So 1 and 2, and then I'm back to the stitches. So this first row, you just kind of have to pay attention to how many single crochets you're doing into your spaces. But once you get into row 2, 3, and 4, you're just simply going to do exactly what you did down here. 1 single crochet into each stitch, slip stitch at the end of every round, chain 1, and continue on. So go ahead and do that, and I will meet up with you when you are finished your 4 rounds. Okay guys, so I had just enough of this teal yarn left over to finish my 4 rounds. So now you can really see where the eyelets are sitting. I am going to do a few more rounds though. It just didn't quite, I still feel for me, for my own personal taste, I just still have about this much of this pink portion showing. I don't mind a little bit, but I just don't want a lot of that pink showing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of this little bit of the blue, dark blue left over, which will be great because it'll tie in that bottom dark color there. So I'm just going to do a few more rounds, probably anywhere from another 2 to another 4 rounds, just to finish it off nicely there. So just kind of do the length for your neck that you see fit. And that is what I'm going to do here. And I'll see you back here shortly. Okay, guys, I'm much happier with how this turned out with the extra rows and the fact that I used the dark blue because I find it ties in the bottom, which is really great. And I love actually the fact that I had these colors left over because it really, the blues and all the, the aquas, the hues really lend themselves for that kind of beachy nautical theme. So when you're using it in the summer, it doesn't look so odd. But the blues also really kind of lend themselves to cool and wintertime, cool seasons. So I really, really am happy with how this turned out. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to make a nice little kind of ruffled trim just to kind of give it a little bit of embellishment. And then we'll work on the cinch and we're done with our water bottle cover. So excited. Okay, so for a super easy and cute little add-on for a ruffled edge, here's what we're going to do. We're going to, so I've slip stitched to join. And we are going to chain 1, single crochet back into that same stitch. And we're going to continue on with single crochets, but now in between all of our single crochets, we're going to chain 2 and then single crochet into the very next stitch. Chain 2 and single crochet into the very next stitch. So it's creating extra stitches, chain 2. And when we have extra stitches, our work starts to ripple a little bit and buckle. See? So just going to give it that cute little ruffly look. And that's it. Chain 2, single crochet as usual. Chain 2, single crochet into the next. Okay, and you can already see it starting to kind of flounce around like that, and that's perfect. That's it, guys. So if you want to leave yours plain, you can certainly do that. And if you want to add the ruffled edge, go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you when I'm done. Okay, guys, you are witnessing this firsthand. Chain 2, my last stitch, and look at that. I just had enough yarn. I was really starting to sweat it out there. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to slip stitch into this one here. And I'm going to chain 1 and pull it through. And we are done. See how it creates just that little kind of ruffled opening, which is perfect. Wow. If I do say so myself, I get excited over these things, you know, when they turned out better than I planned. So that's just a little ruffled edging there at the top. The last touch is just to create our cinch. It's so easy. So I have a little bit of some of this brown left over here. So all we're going to do is we're just going to create a chain length to tie it around. I'm going to do a chain length of 50 chains. Okay, so just going to leave a bit of a tail. And I'm going to chain 80. Okay, and now I've got my 80 chains here. Once I've done that. Now, if you find that you need more length, definitely use more if you need. Or if you don't want as many and you want a short tie, then you can certainly do that. So I'm just going to snip my yarn. And I'm going to pull that through. And you can leave the tail around if you want. Or you can snip it. I at least like my tails to be, oh, pretty close. Same length. And now all we're going to do is we are going to weave it through. And so for me, I have decided that this is going to be the front part. Now, this doesn't always work out, but I want this to come out the front. So I'm going to go in, then out, weaving that all the way around. Oops, I'm going to weave in my tail there. Perfect. So this last one is going in. And then it's going to come out the same one I've got here, which is what I like. Just like that. And there is your cinch tie. So now all we have left is to place our cover on our bottle, and we're good to go. Okay, so here it is. Love how that looks. And now all we do is we make sure this is nice and even. And then we tie our tie here. Oops. Just like that. And we are good to go. There you have it, guys. I so love this. Here is your water bottle cover. Okay, and of course you can pick any color combination you like, but this is, like I said, perfect for cooling you down at the beach, especially for those ladies that, you know, suffer from hot flashes. I found that this has become my best friend. So you can use this for cold, hot, all kinds of great things. And this way it protects your skin a little bit. And I am very happy at how it came out. I hope you have found it super easy, just like I said it was going to be. basically using single crochet stitches, we've been able to create this beauty. So guys, thank you for coming along on today's crochet journey. If you have any questions, you know you can always leave me a comment or question in the comment box down below. And of course, many of you have reached out to me directly, which I absolutely love. You can send me an email directly at info@crochetcrafty.com, and I would be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. Some of you have been asking me about written patterns. We do have a few of them on our Etsy shop, and there is a link as well in the description box down below. We also have a bunch of free written patterns on our website, which is crochetcrafty.com. And of course, if you're not already, you should really subscribe to this channel so you stay up to date every time I upload a new video, which is every Wednesday. You never know what creations we're going to come up with. And that way you'll always stay up to date on everything, as well as all the stuff that's happening with the newsletter and many of our interactive online classes where you can get a little bit of one-on-one attention. So without further ado, I hope you have an amazing day. Take good care of yourselves. Happy crocheting, and I'll see you in the next session. Take care.